While the 12 apostles often take the spotlight, Jesus' ministry relied on a broader network, a network of those whose faith, resources, and support were actually indispensable. So, who were these ones? Well, Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Susanna, Martha, Mary, and many others. See, they provided not only spiritual, but practical and financial support, often sustaining the mission more consistently than many of the male disciples. See, remember what the apostles and others had actually given up. See, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, they had left fishing businesses. Matthew, his tax collecting franchise. And for the rest, well, they all left their sources of income to join the band of preachers and teachers Jesus was actually putting together. Clearly, the whole team needed support. But from where? In the Gospel of Luke, we start to see a framework of this support. Some of the names of the women who followed Jesus from Galilee, providing for him from their own resources. Ones like Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Susanna, and of course the others. Luke chapter 8 and those first 3 verses we read. Soon afterwards, Jesus traveled from one town and village to another, preaching and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, as well as some women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out. Joanna, the wife of Herod's household manager, Chusa. Susanna, and many others. See, these women were ministering to them out of their own means. And at the heart of this support was Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary, from humble beginnings in Nazareth, she was in fact betrothed to Joseph, a carpenter. Matthew 13:55, we read, "Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? And aren't his brothers James and Joseph and Simon and Judas?" See, her working class background didn't prevent her from having a profound spiritual influence on the family. She was present at Cana, John chapter 2, and those first 11 verses. See, the intervention by her regarding the wine suggests that this wedding feast was indeed really a family affair. And some traditions suggest it was Jude's wedding, the youngest son. Then at the execution site, John chapter 19, 25 to 27 informs us that she was there when so many others had deserted. And then again, in the upper room at Pentecost, she was there with the rest of the family. Acts chapter 1 and verse 14. See, all of this exemplifying a faithful presence, a familial support, and of course, guidance. Clearly, this was an ongoing support for her son. Luke's gospel records that even Jesus, at an early age of 12, well, she was in full support of him. Luke 2 and verses 51, we read, "He went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them, but his mother treasured up all these sayings in her heart." You'll remember the account when they lost him in the temple and found him eventually. Mary's modest social standing did not really limit her spiritual influence. She provided this familial stability and embodied the faithful presence that really underpinned Jesus' mission. See, then we have ones like Mary Magdalene, likely from the town of Magdala, and she had experienced social marginalization before Jesus delivered her. Luke chapter 8 and verses 2 and 3. As well as some women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out. Joanna, the wife of Herod's household manager, Chusa. Susanna, many others. See, these women were ministering to them out of their own means. See, clearly, Jesus exercised the demonic control that Mary Magdalene was under, and after this transformation, she became a financial supporter and the first witness of the resurrection, highlighting her restored social and spiritual influence. Joanna, Susanna, and others had resources to sustain the travel and the ministry that they involved themselves in. And historical insights suggest that Joanna may have been married to a local official, providing social standing and, of course, economic independence, rare for women of her time. And let's note some additional spiritual anchors, if you like. Matthew 27:55 and 56. And many women were there watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to minister to him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. Then, appearing to Mary Magdalene, Jesus gives her an instruction about telling others. John chapter 20, 16 to 18. We read, Jesus said to her, Mary, and she turned and said to him in Hebrew, Rabboni, which means teacher. Do not cling to me, Jesus said, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go and tell my brothers, I am ascending to my Father and to your Father, and to my God and to your God. Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord. And she told them what he had said to her. Jesus really had made her an apostle to the apostles. Then, of course, in the non-canonical writings, for example, in the Gospel of Mary, it portrays Mary Magdalene providing guidance and teaching to other disciples, reflecting really spiritual leadership. The ministry, well, it required constant travel and lodgings and meals. The women provided these real essentials, the cooking, arranging housing, and ensuring safety, thus enabling the apostles to really focus on teaching and healing. Traveling teachers, well, really, they depended on hospitality. Refusing a guest, it was a bit of a public statement. See, in Luke chapter 10 and 38 to 42, we read, As they traveled along, Jesus entered a village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to his message. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations to be made. And she came to Jesus and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord replied, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, and it will not be taken away from her. See, just consider for a moment the lesson for all concerned, including us here today. See, Martha and Mary of Bethany, living just a few kilometers from Jerusalem, likely had property and wealth, thus giving them the capacity to host traveling ministers. Likely, they were close friends with Jesus and his family, possibly from previous visits to Jerusalem, during the festival gatherings. And of course, there was always a welcome into their home. This occasion, which was likely shortly after he had commissioned these 72 and sent them out on a mission, Luke chapter 10 and those 24 verses. And then on this occasion, Martha prepares and serves a meal, while Mary sits at Jesus' feet. Martha complains, but Jesus replies, Mary has chosen the good portion, and it will not be taken away from her. See, the lesson for all of us is to always keep spiritual things first in our lives. Next, let's consider the site of Jesus' execution and the role that the women played. See, Mark chapter 15 and verses 41 and 42 informs us. And there were also women watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph and Salome. See, these women had followed Jesus and ministered to him while he was in Galilee. And there were many other women who had come up to Jerusalem with him. See, many of the women were there, observing from a distance, still in support of Jesus. It was a dangerous place and indeed a dangerous time. See, remember, Jesus' execution was for insurrection. See, Pilate put a sign over Jesus, didn't he? Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. See, to the Roman authorities, any claim to kingship was seen as insurrection, and therefore death by crucifixion was the penalty. Now, Pilate knew that Jesus was innocent, but he was really covering his back with the sign. And in addition, of course, to angering the Jews who were appalled by the sign. So when we step back and consider the encompassing nature of the support Jesus had, verse 41 demonstrates the large role women played in the nucleus of this teaching band that Jesus had put together. See, the women's ability to provide materially often stemmed from relative independence or familial connections, including, of course, Joanna's link to a Roman official, who were the first to witness key events like the crucifixion, the burial, and the resurrection. Mary Magdalene's role as an apostle to the apostles, John chapter 20, 17 and 18, really emphasizes women as primary witnesses and messengers, apostles. Non-canonical texts like the Gospel of Mary highlight the teaching and guidance these women provided, challenging assumptions about gender and ministry. See, the apostles' ability to preach and heal relied on this diverse support network that they had. See, women's contribution, they were spiritual, but practical and relational. See, allowing the message to extend beyond Galilee. So, to reflect on some scriptural anchors, consider Acts 1 and verse 14. All these, with one accord, devoted themselves to prayer, together with the women and Mary, the mother of Jesus. Luke chapter 8, first 3 verses. These women supported him out of their own means. So in conclusion, Jesus' ministry was not solely the work of the apostles. It was, in fact, a collective effort, sustained by faithful women of varied social backgrounds. From the humble Mary of Nazareth to the restored Mary Magdalene, to resourceful ones like Joanna and Susanna, to hospitable ones like Martha and Mary of Bethany. Then, at John chapter 11 and those 44 verses, we can read the whole account of Jesus resurrecting his friend Lazarus. But in that same chapter, but verse 27, Martha makes one of the strongest confessions of faith. "Yes, Lord," she answered, "I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world." And then moving on in the account, some 6 days before the Passover, on the final visit of Jesus to Jerusalem, what do we find? Well, John chapter 12 and those first 8 verses. We find a dinner is given for Jesus in Bethany. Lazarus, the one who he resurrected, is reclining at the table. Martha serves. Mary anoints Jesus' feet with costly perfume. And in the parallel account in Mark chapter 14 and verse 9, we read, "And truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached in all the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." Never a truer statement. Here we are today, still reflecting on her attestation. See, understanding their social standing and roles reveals really the sort of radical inclusivity and practical wisdom of Jesus in putting this whole band together for the ministry. See, the service of these women, their leadership and witness, they were fundamental to the spread of the gospel. Now, I would like to close out this video with a final reflection on Mary, the mother of Jesus. Biblical scholar Professor James Tabor addresses Mary's lost historical role in his 2025 book, The Lost Mary, Rediscovering the Mother of Jesus. See, he's drawing on 3 decades of textual analysis, including the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi texts, and of course other archaeological evidence, which he does himself personally regularly every year, it seems. See, Professor Tabor argues Mary was a pivotal figure, a matriarch of spiritual revolution in the family of Jesus and that movement. Possibly a leader of the early followers following his death. He challenges traditional views by proposing she was not merely symbolic, but an active prophetess and leader, overlooked due to the patriarchal bias in the formation of the canon. So, there we are. I hope all of this helps us to appreciate the fundamental role women played in the early movement. Now, in our next video, we are going to return to the subject of the Gospel of John. See, you will recall we made a brief detour into this Gospel in Series 5 and Episode 2. But now we will return to it, and really for a very good theological reason. Now, there will be a link in the credits to this previous video, really as a preparatory reference, which we hope you will have a look at before the next video. So until then, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.